Welcome back to Andersen. We are inside today only because I don't really need to be outside to film Shadowfax just to talk about what we're going to start talking about today. So I wanted to start talking about supplements, but I'm going to do it in two different videos. So today I'm going to talk specifically about salt, and then next week I'm going to talk about other vitamins and minerals and supplements you may or may not want to give your mini horse. So here's the thing. Horse people, whether you're a mini horse person or a larger horse person, love supplements. Okay? Most horse people will be perfectly happy to sit there and tell you all about the different vitamins and minerals and things we give to our horses. Most horse people will sit there and eat ramen noodles for a month in order to be able to afford some of the higher priced supplements. You will see them at every feed store. You can flip through a horse magazine and there are supplements. It's a big business. Supplements for horses, both mini and standard and even draft horses, is big business. But what does your horse actually need? Your mini horse specifically. Remember, I'm only talking about miniature horses. I am not talking about their larger counterparts. So what does your miniature horse need? So one of the things they really do need is salt. Almost without exception. Now, there's always going to be somebody who goes, oh, I can't give my horse salt. But almost without exception, salt is one of those things that does need to be added to your miniature horse's diet. It's incredibly important. So horses, unlike humans, don't really have a problem with excess salt, right? They don't have a bunch of processed foods that they eat all the time. They do not have a high salt intake. Remember, they eat grasses and they eat hay, and that doesn't have a lot of salt in it naturally. So they don't tend to be overloaded with salt. So they do still need a way to get the salt they need and to regulate their salt intake. And if left to their own devices, and if given access to an appropriate salt block or salt rock, a horse will regulate their own salt intake. Okay, they'll eat salt when they need it, and they won't eat salt when they don't need it. So the most efficient way to provide your horse with the salt they need is either through a salt block or a salt rock. So they are a little bit different. So a salt rock tends to be a natural, just big chunk of rock that has a hole drilled in it and a rope passed through it so you can hang it somewhere. A salt block is more concentrated, more refined, still very, very good. Most of us feed salt blocks, let's be honest. They are convenient. They are not super expensive. Pound for pound of usable salt, it's cheaper to get a block than it is to get the unrefined rocks, because the unrefined rock is not just pure salt. It is, kind of a mixture. It's a rock. So the salt blocks are a better bang for your buck. But it doesn't really matter. You can do the block or the rock. It really doesn't matter. Okay, so don't let somebody tell you, oh no, you can only use salt rocks. You better not use one of those processed blocks. There's nothing wrong with the processed block. It's just a more refined, direct way to get salt into your horse. So it doesn't matter which one you use. It does not matter. So a hardworking or an elderly horse might actually need a loose salt added into their feed. Before you do that, check with your vet, because the benefit of using a salt block or a salt rock is the horse can go over and they can consume however much salt is good for them. When you put the loose salt into the feed, you're actually almost forcing them to consume the salt. So that may or may not be a good option for your horse. So before you add loose salt to their feed, consult your vet to make sure that is a good option for your miniature horse. So in a pinch, in a pinch, salt. But in a pinch, plain old table salt can work as a supplement for your miniature horse if you have nothing else. You would do 1 to 2 teaspoons for your average size miniature horse, maybe a little bit more in the winter. It's not ideal, but if you really do not have access to a salt block, maybe your feed store is completely out, maybe it's going to be a couple weeks before you can get another salt block, it is okay to use loose table salt. Just do that temporarily though, because it's not ideal. It's not really formulated for a horse, and it's really just easier to use a salt block. So if you can go with a salt block or a salt rock, if you absolutely have no choice, you can supplement with 1 to 2 teaspoons of table salt temporarily while you wait to get that salt block. If you live in a more rural area like I do, occasionally your feed store's out of them, and you can order them from like Amazon and stuff. But again, that takes a few days. We're quite rural. So because we're so rural, it takes a while. Even with Amazon Prime shipping, it'll still take a couple of days. So in a pinch, yes, you can use a little bit of table salt. There are many, many, many different choices. You can get, again, I said blocks and rocks. You can get, there's a lot of options in those two categories. So you can get blocks that are red. You can get blocks that are blue. You can get blocks that, there's a lot of different choices. So what works best for you and your mini might not be what works best for me and Shadowfax. If you're really not sure, talk to your vet. They know your horse, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. They'll be able to tell you whether a cobalt blue salt block or whatever is best for your horse. Shadowfax right now, what do we use for Shadowfax? We use an unrefined salt rock, and it really works for him. It has a hole in the center, and we just hang it on the fence. It really works good for him, and it's also good for Arwen, who's the goat. So they can both have it, which is good because you can't stop Arwen from having anything. But that's what we use right now. I'll provide a link in the video description to the product we actually use, but what you use will be determined by your particular mini horse. Again, mini horses are individuals, so you might want to consult your vet if you're unsure of which salt block is best for your mini, which type of salt. If you do have a working horse, again, you may have to provide the loose salt in the feed to make sure they're getting enough. Either way, you do want to make sure to cover your bases when it comes to providing salt for your miniature horse. They do need it. So it's okay to go a few weeks without the salt block if you have to, but ideally you should always provide the salt block or the salt rock so that they can regulate their salt intake and be as healthy as they possibly can be. That's about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. We'll see you tomorrow.